Every villain has a motive, every monster has a reason. But what happens when that reason makes sense? When the horror on screen is not random evil, but the logical conclusion of a world already broken? These 10 films dare to ask the question most people are too uncomfortable to answer. What if the villain was right? Not right to kill, not right to destroy, but right about the system, right about human nature, right about the truth nobody wanted to face. This is not a list of heroes. This list of horrors that hold up a mirror, and what stares back is not the monster. It is us. Drag Me to Hell. Sam Raimi's 2009 supernatural horror film Drag Me to Hell opens not with a monster, but with a decision. Christine Brown is a bank loan officer in Los Angeles, competing with a colleague for an assistant manager promotion. Her boss has made it clear the job goes to whoever can make the tough calls. When elderly Romani woman Sylvia Ganush arrives at her desk and gets on her knees begging for a third extension on her mortgage, Christine denies her to impress her boss. Mrs. Ganush faces foreclosure and the loss of her home. She follows Christine to the parking garage that night, attacks her, and tears a button from her coat, placing the curse of the Lamia upon her. The Lamia is a demon that will torment its victim for 3 days before dragging them into hell for eternity. What follows is 3 days of relentless, supernatural attack. Christine is thrown across rooms, plagued with hallucinations, and tormented at a dinner party with her boyfriend Clay's parents. She visits psychic Ram Jas, who confirms the curse is real and connects her to medium Sean Sandina, who agrees to perform a seance to trap the Lamia. During the seance, the Lamia violently overtakes Sandina, who dies from the ordeal. Christine then digs up Mrs. Ganush's grave in a thunderstorm and forces the cursed button into the corpse's mouth, believing the curse transfers back with it. The next morning, she believes she is free. At the train station, Clay pulls out an envelope he found in his car. The cursed button is inside it. Christine had grabbed the wrong envelope the night before. The curse was never broken. She stumbles backward onto the tracks, and demonic hands drag her screaming into hell as Clay watches, unable to reach her. Mrs. Ganush asked for nothing more than more time to keep her home. The bank said no. When the ground opened and swallowed Christine whole, it was not evil that won. It was a debt the world had already decided one life was worth, and the villain who was right about the cost. Apostle. Gareth Evans' 2018 Netflix folk horror film Apostle is set in 1905 and opens with a man boarding a boat to a remote Welsh island under a false name. Thomas Richardson, played by Dan Stevens, is a former missionary traveling to the island of Erisden, posing as a new cult convert to rescue his sister Jennifer, who has been kidnapped and held for ransom by a religious community led by self-proclaimed prophet Malcolm Howe, played by Michael Sheen. What Thomas finds is not simple fanaticism. Malcolm founded Erisden with 2 other convicts, Frank and Quinn. The island was barren when they arrived until they discovered a goddess living beneath it. When fed blood, she made the soil fertile. Malcolm captured her, imprisoned her in tree roots in a barn, and built an entire religion around her power. When animal blood stopped working, Quinn decided the answer was human sacrifice. The community fractures from within. Quinn murders his own pregnant daughter Effion, frames her lover Jeremy for it, has Jeremy killed through the cult's purification ritual, and seizes control from Malcolm. Quinn imprisons Jennifer and Malcolm's daughter Andrea, announcing they will bear children every year to feed the goddess. Thomas fights through the burning settlement, kills Quinn, and rescues his sister, but collapses from his wounds at the hilltop. The goddess finds him. Vines grow through his skin. She calls him her son. Thomas merges with the land. The goddess never asked to be imprisoned. She gave fertility freely, and the men who found her built chains around it. Every death on that island was the direct cost of that first decision to take, rather than receive. When the land finally reclaimed one of them, it was not darkness that triumphed. It was the oldest truth on that island finally proving itself. You cannot imprison something that was never yours to own. Oculus. Mike Flanagan's 2013 supernatural horror film, Oculus, tells its story across 2 timelines, the past destroying a family and the present destroying what is left of it. In 2002, software engineer Alan Russell moves into a new home with his wife Marie, his 10-year-old son Tim, and his 12-year-old daughter Kaylee. Alan purchases an antique mirror called the Lasser Glass for his home office. Within weeks, the household collapses, the plants die. Marie is haunted by visions of her own body decaying, while Alan becomes increasingly psychotic. Marie is eventually chained to the wall by Alan. The children watch their family destroyed until the night Alan tries to kill Kaylee, and Tim shoots his father dead to save her. Tim is taken into psychiatric care. Kaylee goes to foster care. The mirror returns to auction. 11 years later, Tim is released from a psychiatric facility, convinced by doctors that everything supernatural he witnessed was a trauma response. Kaylee never believed that. She has spent her entire adulthood documenting the mirror's history. Every person who ever owned the Lasser glass died a gruesome death, many found dehydrated or having mutilated themselves. She secures the mirror from the auction house where she works, sets it up in the old family home surrounded by cameras and a kill switch, an anchor rigged to smash it. The mirror immediately begins its work. It manipulates their perception so completely that when Tim triggers the kill switch, it swings into Kaylee instead, killing her. Tim is arrested, a second murder in the same house, on camera, with no evidence of what actually caused it. Kaylee spent 11 years building the most careful case she could against something that does not allow evidence to survive. When it took her, it was not evil that prevailed. It was a force that had been right about human powerlessness since before any of them were born. The Girl with All the Gifts. Colin McCarthy's 2016 British post-apocalyptic horror film The Girl with All the Gifts opens in a military base in rural Britain where children are wheeled to class in restraints every morning. They are second-generation hungries, offspring of humans infected by a mutated fungal pathogen, who retain their intelligence while still carrying the hunger. Among them is Melanie, played by Senya Nanyua, an exceptionally bright girl who has formed a bond with her teacher Helen Justineau, played by Gemma Arterton. Dr. Caroline Caldwell, played by Glenn Close, runs experiments on the children believing one holds the key to a vaccine. When hungries overrun the base, Melanie escapes with Justineau, Sergeant Parks, and Caldwell in an armored vehicle. They travel through the ruins of London and come across the BT Tower, completely overgrown by a massive fungal growth. Caldwell explains that the pods contain spores that when released would become airborne and infect the entire remaining human population. Caldwell tells Melanie she must sacrifice herself for the vaccine. Melanie refuses. She ignites the fungal pods herself, releasing the spores. Parks is fatally wounded and asks Melanie to burn him before he turns. The remaining uninfected survivors seal themselves inside the mobile lab. The film ends with Justineau locked inside the sealed lab, permanently separated from the outside world. Melanie brings the feral hybrid children to sit before Justineau's window, and Justineau begins teaching them through the glass. Humanity as it existed is over. Melanie did not destroy the world out of malice. She looked at what humanity had built, at the cages and experiments and children in restraints, and decided the ones who came after deserved better. Vivarium. Lorcan Finnegan's 2019 science fiction psychological horror film Vivarium opens with a cuckoo chick pushing other eggs from a nest, so the host bird raises it alone, and that image is the entire film. Gemma, a primary school teacher, and her boyfriend Tom, a landscaper, follow a strange real estate agent named Martin to a housing development called Yonder. Every house is identical, the same green prefab structure repeated in every direction. After the tour, Martin vanishes. Every route out of Yonder returns them to house number 9. They drive until they run out of fuel. There is no phone signal. They sleep in the house. The next morning, a box arrives with a baby inside and a note reading, "Raise the child and be released." The child grows at an unnatural rate, mimicking human behavior without understanding it. Tom becomes obsessed with digging a hole in the garden, believing it leads somewhere. Tom's health deteriorates as he digs deeper. He finds a dead body at the bottom. He dies and is placed in a body bag and buried in the hole he dug. Gemma attacks the boy with a shovel. The boy reveals his true non-human form, lifts the pavement, and disappears. Gemma follows and finds other humans trapped in identical houses, raising identical children. She returns to house number 9 and dies. She is buried in the same hole. The boy, now grown, returns to the real estate office. The original agent has aged to death. The boy places him in a body bag, takes his seat, and waits for the next couple. There was never an escape. There was never a way out. When it buried them both and opened the door for the next couple, it was not cruelty that prevailed. It was a system that had always been right, that no one ever truly owns anything. The Cabin in the Woods. Drew Goddard's 2012 horror film, The Cabin in the Woods, begins not at a cabin, but in an underground facility where two engineers, Sitterson and Hadley, are preparing what they call the ritual. 5 college students, Dana, Jules, Kurt, Holden, and Marty, head to a remote cabin for the weekend, unaware that every decision they make is being manipulated from below. Technicians pump pheromones into the air, adjust lighting, and use chemical compounds to influence behavior. When the group finds objects in the cabin's cellar, Dana reads aloud from the diary of Patience Buckner and unknowingly summons the zombie Buckner family from a nearby grave. Jules is killed first, then Kurt, then Holden. The facility celebrates, but Marty, presumed dead, survived. He finds an access hatch leading into the facility and takes Dana with him. They descend into a complex filled with caged monsters, every horror creature imaginable, selected by the victims when they chose which object to touch in the cellar. Dana and Marty release the monsters, who tear through the facility staff. They reach a ritual chamber where the director explains everything. Annual human sacrifices are performed worldwide to appease the Ancient Ones, powerful subterranean deities who require blood. The American ritual demands 5 specific archetypes. The escort must die first, the virgin must die last or survive. If the ritual fails, the Ancient Ones will rise and destroy humanity. The director urges Dana to shoot Marty. She hesitates. A werewolf mauls her. Marty shoots it off. Patience Buckner kills the director. Marty kicks them both into the pit. Dana and Marty decide humanity is not worth saving. The Ancient Ones rise. A colossal hand bursts through the earth and destroys the facility and the cabin above it. When the ground split open and the hand reached up, it was not chaos that won. It was an ancient patience finally proven right, that humanity would always find a way to fail the one test that mattered. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Andre Overdahl's 2016 supernatural horror film. The Autopsy of Jane Doe begins with an inexplicable crime scene. A family found dead with no signs of forced entry, the victims clearly trying to escape from inside. In the basement, police find an unidentified young woman half buried in the soil. She is brought that night to father and son coroners Tommy and Austin Tilden, played by Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch, with a request for a cause of death by morning. The body shows no external trauma, but as the autopsy progresses, every layer reveals something worse. Her wrist and ankle bones are shattered, her tongue has been severed, her lungs are blackened, her organs show numerous stab wounds with no corresponding external marks. Jimsonweed, a paralyzing agent native to New England, is found in her stomach. Inside her body, they find her missing tooth wrapped in cloth bearing Roman numerals and symbols referencing Leviticus 20:27 and the year 1693, the date of the Salem witch trials. Tommy deduces that an innocent woman was subjected to a ritual intended to create a witch, and that the ritual worked. Her neurons are still active. The morgue becomes a trap, the lights explode, the corpses vanish. Tommy accidentally kills Austin's girlfriend Emma in the dark. Tommy offers himself to Jane as a sacrifice to spare Austin. Her injuries begin transferring to his body. Austin kills his father to end his suffering. Austin hears the sheriff outside. It is a hallucination. He falls backward over the railing and dies. The next morning, police find 3 dead bodies and Jane's intact corpse with no signs of an autopsy. She is transported to another county. In the ambulance, her toe twitches. She was tortured into something she never asked to become and never stopped collecting what was owed. When the toe moved and the bell rang, it was not horror that prevailed. It was a woman who had been right all along, that no one who touched her would walk away whole. The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yorgos Lanthimos' 2017 psychological horror film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, begins with a surgeon and a teenage boy meeting for lunch. Stephen Murphy, played by Colin Farrell, is a cardiothoracic surgeon who has quietly maintained a relationship with Martin Lang, played by Barry Keoghan, a fatherless teenager whose father died on Stephen's operating table. Stephen has never publicly acknowledged any responsibility for that death. He brings Martin gifts and introduces him to his family, his wife Anna, played by Nicole Kidman, and their 2 children, 14-year-old Kim and 12-year-old Bob. Martin eventually confronts Stephen directly. He tells him that because Stephen killed a member of his family, Stephen must now kill a member of his own family to balance it out. If he refuses, his children will first lose the use of their legs, then stop eating, then bleed from their eyes, and then die. Stephen dismisses this, then Bob loses the use of his legs, then Kim. No medical explanation can be found. Stephen kidnaps Martin and holds him in the basement. Anna frees Martin and he escapes. Bob's eyes begin bleeding. Stephen has run out of time. He ties his wife and both children separately, seats them in the living room, pulls a beanie over his face, spins in a circle, and fires a rifle randomly. He does this until a shot hits Bob, killing him. The final scene shows Stephen, Anna, and Kim eating in a diner. Martin enters, looks at them, and they leave without speaking. Martin's curse worked exactly as he said it would. A surgeon's error killed a father, and the system that protected that surgeon offered Martin nothing. No accountability, no acknowledgement, no justice. Martin built his own. When the rifle fired and the boy fell, it was not madness that won. It was a teenager proving he had always been right, that blood only answers to blood. The Witch. Robert Eggers' 2015 folk horror film, The Witch, is set in 1630s New England and follows a Puritan family banished from their plantation colony over a religious dispute. William leads his wife Catherine and their 5 children, Thomason, Caleb, twins Mercy and Jonas, and newborn Samuel, to build a farm on the edge of a vast dark forest. Shortly after settling, Samuel disappears while under Thomason's care. A witch living in the forest has taken him. Catherine is consumed by grief. The crops fail. William secretly trades Catherine's silver cup for hunting supplies. Caleb wanders into the woods alone on a hunting trip and encounters the witch, who appears as a young woman. He returns to the farm that night naked and delirious. The next day he convulses, vomits a whole apple, and dies. The twins claim Black Phillip, the family's black goat, speaks to them. Thomason tells her parents. William locks all 3 children in the goat house. That night the witch enters the stable and attacks the twins off-screen. In the morning the twins are gone. Black Phillip gores William to death. Catherine emerges and attacks Thomason, blaming her for every death. Thomason kills her mother in self-defense. Alone, Thomason speaks to Black Phillip. The goat responds in a human voice and asks if she would like to live deliciously. She accepts. She removes her clothes, follows him into the forest, and finds a coven of witches holding a Sabbath around a bonfire. The witches begin to levitate, and Thomason rises with them above the trees. Her family called her a witch, accused her, blamed her, and locked her away. By the time the forest took her, the only thing that had ever told Thomason the truth was the devil. When she rose above the trees laughing, it was not damnation that won. It was the only honest offer she had ever received in a life built on false promises and a faith that never once protected her. The Platform. Galder Gaztelu Urrutia's 2019 Spanish horror film, The Platform, originally titled El Hoyo, takes place entirely inside a vertical prison called The Pit. Each level holds 2 prisoners. Once a day, a platform loaded with food descends from level 0, stopping for 2 minutes at each floor. Prisoners at the top eat as much as they want. By the time the platform reaches lower levels, there is nothing left. Prisoners are gassed and randomly reassigned to a new level each month. Sometimes high, sometimes so far down, they resort to cannibalism to survive. Goreng wakes up on level 48 with a copy of Don Quixote as his permitted object. His cellmate Trimagasi explains the rules. Goreng witnesses the system's brutality at every level he rotates through. He shares a level with Imogiri, a former administration employee who volunteered to enter the pit, believing the food was sufficient for everyone if distributed fairly. She later hangs herself. After months of rotation, Goreng partners with Baharat, and the two descend on the platform level by level, forcing prisoners to leave portions for those below, using violence when necessary. Deep in the descent, they find a young child alive on one of the lowest levels. Both men are severely wounded. At the bottom, Goreng experiences what may be a hallucination of Trimagasi, who tells him the child must ascend alone. Goreng stays behind. The platform rises with the child on it. The system had always been right about one thing, that those above consume everything and those below starve unless someone chooses to stay behind and bear the cost. When the platform rose and left Goreng at the bottom, it was not the system that won. It was the system that had always been right that the only way to send a message upward is to sacrifice yourself to deliver it. And that is the list. If you are choosing where to start, the killing of a sacred deer is the one if you want a villain whose logic you cannot argue with. The platform will get under your skin if you have ever looked at what is above you and wondered why they always take more than they need. And if you are ready for the one that makes you question whether any of us deserve to survive, the cabin in the woods is waiting. Drop a comment telling me which villain you think was the most right. Hit like and subscribe. More horror breakdowns coming soon.